Don't let her inside. My sister Vanessa was standing at our mother's funeral doors with a printed guest list in her hand, and my name was crossed out in black ink. Half the church had already turned to stare at me by the time I stopped at the entrance. I was still holding the flowers I bought for Mom that morning when Vanessa stepped in front of me and said, loud enough for people to hear, "You lost the right to call yourself family a long time ago." I hadn't even buried my mother yet, and my own sister was trying to erase me in front of everyone we knew. Then the funeral director suddenly went quiet because a black sedan had just pulled up behind me. And the second Vanessa saw who was getting out of that car, her face completely fell. I turned around just as the driver stepped aside, and an older man climbed out slowly in a dark charcoal coat. For a second, nobody moved. Not the church members standing near the doors. Not the cousins whispering behind Vanessa. Not even Vanessa herself. She just stared, like she'd seen someone she thought was gone forever. The man looked directly at me first, then at Vanessa, and the expression on his face wasn't confusion. It was disappointment. My stomach tightened because I recognized him too. Marcus Hale. I hadn't seen him since I was a little kid. Back then, he used to come over during birthdays and holidays. Mom always smiled differently when he was around. Then one day, Vanessa told me he'd betrayed our family and stolen money from Mom before disappearing. After that, his name was basically forbidden in our house. And now he was standing in the church parking lot at my mother's funeral like he had every right to be there. Vanessa recovered first. "No," she said under her breath. Then louder, "What is he doing here?" Marcus didn't answer her immediately. He walked past the crowd, stopped beside me, and looked down at the flowers shaking in my hands. "You came," he said quietly. Before I could even respond, Vanessa snapped. She wasn't invited. The embarrassment hit me all over again. Every person near those church doors was pretending not to listen while very obviously listening. Marcus finally looked at Vanessa. "She's Diane's daughter," he said. "You don't get to decide whether she buries her own mother." Vanessa's jaw tightened so hard, I thought she might actually explode right there in front of everyone. "You shouldn't even be here," she fired back. That's when another voice cut in behind us. Actually, the voice said calmly, "Diane specifically requested that he be here today." Everybody turned. And when I saw who had just walked up the church steps holding a sealed manila envelope in his hand, I realized this funeral was about to become something completely different. "Becky," Walter Green said, stopping beside us, "your mother wanted you inside before the service begins." The second he said that, the entire mood outside the church shifted. Everybody in town knew Walter. He'd been my mother's attorney for over 20 years. He handled wills, property disputes, business contracts, serious things. He wasn't the kind of man who showed up unexpectedly to create drama at funerals. But Vanessa looked nervous the moment she saw the envelope in his hand. Not angry, nervous. And that scared me more than anything else. She was very clear about her wishes, Walter continued calmly. Vanessa crossed her arms. "My mother also trusted me to handle this funeral." Walter didn't blink. "Your mother trusted me to make sure certain things happened exactly the way she requested." The way Vanessa's face tightened told me they'd already had this argument before I arrived. People were openly staring now. My Aunt Denise had stopped halfway up the church steps. Even the funeral director was pretending to organize papers just to stay close enough to listen. I suddenly felt exposed standing there between Vanessa and Marcus like I'd walked into the middle of something that had started long before today. Marcus leaned toward me slightly. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I honestly didn't know. 2 days ago, Vanessa called me and told me not to come because I was not really family anymore. Before that, she'd barely answered my texts during Mom's final weeks in hospice. Every time I tried calling mom directly, Vanessa somehow intercepted it. At the time, I told myself she was overwhelmed. Now I wasn't so sure. Walter held the envelope against his side and looked directly at Vanessa. There's still time to do this the easy way. Vanessa's eyes flashed with panic for just a second. Then she said something that made my chest go cold. She never told Becky the truth, she said, and she never wanted her to find out like this. Marcus stared at her. Walter went silent, and for the first time that morning, I realized everyone around me knew something about my life that I didn't. What truth? I asked. Nobody answered me immediately. Vanessa looked furious that she'd slipped up at all. Walter lowered his voice and said, "This isn't the place." The funeral wasn't supposed to become a courtroom either, Vanessa snapped. Then she pointed at Marcus. You disappear for 20 years and now you suddenly show up pretending you care? Marcus didn't react. That almost made it worse. He just looked at her and said, "Your mother called me 3 months ago." Vanessa froze. I felt my stomach drop. Because mom never mentioned that to me. Walter slowly lifted the envelope. Diane updated her will before she passed. A few relatives nearby exchanged looks instantly. Vanessa stepped forward fast. This is about money now? No, Walter said firmly. It's about a lie. The church doors opened behind us as guests began filing inside. And right before Vanessa walked away, she leaned close enough for only me to hear. If you go in there with him, she whispered, staring at Marcus, your entire life is about to change. I followed them inside anyway. The church felt suffocatingly quiet as people slid into pews pretending not to watch us. Vanessa stayed near the front beside Mom's casket, but she kept glancing back at Marcus like she was afraid of what he might say. Then, right before the pastor started speaking, Marcus leaned toward Walter and nodded once. Walter stood. I apologize, he said to the room, but Diane Bex left instructions that something must be addressed before today's service continues. A wave of whispers spread instantly. Vanessa shot to her feet. No, absolutely not. Walter ignored her and opened the envelope. My hands were shaking now. He removed a folded document, looked directly at me, and said, Becky, your mother wanted you to know that Marcus Hale is your biological father. The room went dead silent. I actually heard someone gasp behind me. Then Vanessa said the one thing that made everything even worse. She was never supposed to tell you. I couldn't even process what I just heard. My ears were ringing. My mother's funeral blurred around me while every single person in that church stared at either me, Marcus, or Vanessa. What? Was the only thing I managed to say. Marcus looked devastated. Not nervous, not guilty, devastated. Your mother wanted to tell you years ago, he said quietly. Vanessa stopped it every time. Vanessa let out a sharp laugh. Oh, please, you abandoned us. That's not true, Walter cut in immediately. He unfolded another document from the envelope. Then he explained everything. When my mom got pregnant with me, she and Marcus were engaged. But Vanessa, already older and deeply attached to our father even after the divorce, hated Marcus from the beginning. She blamed him for replacing the family she wanted back. Over the years, Marcus sent letters, birthday gifts, money for school. Vanessa intercepted all of it. Even during Mom's illness, she controlled the calls, blocked messages, and kept us separated while telling each of us different stories. My mother finally confessed everything to Walter after learning she was dying. That's why Vanessa tried to ban me from the funeral. Not because I didn't belong, because she knew the truth would come out the second Marcus walked through those doors beside me. The damage hit instantly. Relatives started confronting Vanessa right there in the pews. Her husband looked completely blindsided. One of my aunts actually began crying after Walter read part of Mom's signed statement out loud. Vanessa eventually grabbed her purse and walked out of the church alone while people moved aside to let her pass. She didn't come back for the burial. A month later, lawyers began reviewing how she handled Mom's finances during hospice care. Several accounts didn't match up. But honestly, the legal mess wasn't what stayed with me. It was the box Marcus brought to my apartment 2 weeks later. Inside were decades of unopened letters addressed to me. Every birthday, every Christmas, every major moment of my life. He had written to me the entire time. That night, I sat on my porch reading them until sunrise. And for the first time since my mother died, I finally understood why she fought so hard to make sure I walked into that church.